Hello there, I'm Ronnie. Welcome to That's the Story. Week 6. My goodness gracious me, this term is going by faster than a bullet train. Now, we're going to start this week off with a chappie called Nigel Nonstop. I wonder why he's called Nigel Nonstop.
Of course, when I was a little boy, there was always this
Nigel Nonstop was a bit of a local legend in the parts of which he came. Everyone knew him as Nigel Nonstop, even though Nigel Nonstop wasn't indeed actually his true, full, real name and legal name. His true, full, real and legal name had been long since forgotten, and Nigel Nonstop it was. Nigel was born one spring afternoon, just after afternoon tea to be exact, and from the moment he arrived on this marvellous, miraculous mound of dirt we call Earth, he could talk
onions all the time. Gosh, did he have smelly breath. Now my aunt
a lot. In fact, he didn't stop.
Gosh, it smelt awful.
Not once.
It smelt like dog's poo.
Not even for a moment.
I couldn't believe how much that smelt. Speaking of smelly.
Now, when Nigel Nonstop was a baby, it was quite the hullabaloo to find a talking toddler amongst the townsfolk. And so, as you can imagine, Nigel Nonstop caused quite the kerfuffle.
Or the stagnant pond that used to...
Reporters came from all the major newspapers, even though it did seem a little pointless to record a talking baby's voice for the newspaper. You could only read what he said. The TV cameras rolled, journalists from radio stations oohed and ahed at this marvellous baby. But as Nigel Nonstop grew, the novelty, well, kind of wore off.
My Aunt Martha had an attack of killer ants once. Well, they weren't really killer ants.
Nothing special about an 8-year-old talking now, is there?
They just swarmed into the house.
The fact that Nigel Nonstop had talked non-stop for the first 8 years of his life didn't seem to attract too much attention.
Now, did you ever see that movie, The Swarm? It was about...
And now that he was 43...
Oh, speaking of bees...
and a third years old, no one really took much notice of Nigel Nonstop's continuous talking, his endless monologue.
Could have been Bert, Barney, Bartram, could have been...
People were truly amazed at Nigel Nonstop, but it wasn't his non-stop talking that amazed them. After all, he had been talking non-stop since the day he was born. Didn't stop for a moment. He talked while eating. He talked while scuba diving.
To be or not to be. Now that was Shakespeare.
He talked at the dentist.
Of course, William Shakespeare was really hard to understand.
He even talked in his sleep.
Oh, William Shakespeare. I wonder what he was like in real life. I wonder if anyone really liked William Shakespeare when he was alive and well.
Yes, people soon got used to Nigel just talking and talking and talking.
But I think it goes to be or not to be. That is the question. Never quite understood that question.
Nigel Nonstop's talking was not the source of people's wonder.
What kind of question is that? Of course you're going to be. I mean, not to be would mean that you weren't there to say to be or not to be in the first place. So,
but when Nigel Nonstop stopped someone in the street for a bit of a chat, they would stand there staring, mouth wide open, amazed and jaw-dropping disbelief.
Gosh, can't understand half of the things that he's saying.
Nigel had the longest nose hair in the world hanging from his left nostril, and when he talked, it danced in the wind his breath made, bouncing in and out as he spoke. And as he never once ever stopped talking, not even for a moment, this 10-centimetre long nose hair continuously danced as he talked, flicking and flopping and whizzing and whirring around the front of his mouth, as he talked and he talked and he talked.
Now, a little game. Oh, I love a little game. This little game is called Who Am I? I'm about to give you some clues. From those clues, you've got to try and guess who it is I'm talking about. Here come those clues.
What's his name? What's she called? I think I know who that is. Who could it be? Let's wait and see what the clues are to this quiz.
This chap was born on April the 15th, 1452 and died on May the 2nd, 1519. He was an Italian polymath, a painter, sculptor, architect, musician, scientist, mathematician, engineer, inventor, anatomist, geologist, botanist and writer. He is probably most famous for his painting, the Mona Lisa, which is now on display in the Louvre in Paris. He was commissioned to paint the Mona Lisa, but he never handed the painting over and he never sold it. He carried it around with him for the last 20 years of his life. He made sketches and concepts for devices as diverse as a helicopter, a tank, concentrated solar power, a calculator, the double hull, and outlined a rudimentary theory of plate tectonics. He was a vegetarian. He often bought caged birds in order to release them. He was a left-hander. He was a great inventor and created items from musical instruments, hydraulic pumps, reversible crank mechanisms, finned mortar shells, to a steam cannon.
What's his name? What's she called? I think I know who that is.
So who do you think that is? Oh my goodness gracious me, if you think you know who it is, ask your mum and dad first, or your caregiver, or your teacher. Head along to our website, that'sthestory.co.nz. Click on Contact Us, you can send your answer in from there. First correct answer will win a book. Now let's see how Norbert and Milo are getting along.
Norbert and Milo's Knock Knock.
Milo! What, Norbert? I've got knock joke for you. Seriously? Go on then. Knock knock. Who's there? Beats. Beats who? Beats me. Ha! This one, yeah, I reckon. Whatever you say, Norbert.
I really hate it when I lose one of my socks. There's nothing worse than just having a single sock all by itself. Actually, there is. Having a single slipper. Imagine losing one of your slippers. What a pain!
Sonia's slipper had gone missing. It wasn't where she left it, at the foot of her bed, right next to its pair. So Sonia had one warm foot, nice and cosy in her woolly slipper, and one cold foot, all alone, hanging out the bottom of her pyjama leg. Sonia thought it even felt a little bit jealous of the left foot, all snug in its pink fluffy footwear. Sonia thought maybe she'd tidied her slipper away, but it wasn't in the wardrobe with her other shoes. She looked in her sister's room in case Susie had accidentally taken one of her slippers by mistake, but there was no sign of her missing slipper in Susie's room. Sonia did find her favourite green and purple striped socks in Susie's room though. She'd have to have a word with Susie later. But first, she needed to find her missing right slipper. Her toes were getting colder by the minute. Sonia wondered if she'd put her slipper in the laundry basket by mistake. She fossicked through the dirty t-shirts, the odd socks, Dad's smelly work socks, and Stephen's muddy soccer gear. But she couldn't see a missing pink slipper in the basket. Next, she thought she may have left it lying in the living room. Sonia's mum was always telling her off for leaving her shoes lying around the house. Sometimes Sonia would get into bed at night and find it full of all the shoes she'd left scattered throughout the house during the day. Sonia looked behind the sofa and under the cushions. She looked behind the TV and on top of the bookcase. She looked in the DVD player even, but there wasn't a slipper anywhere in the living room. Sonia's 5 right toes weren't getting any warmer. She tried swapping her left slipper onto her right foot, but it was the wrong shape and made her ankle feel funny. It was worse than having cold toes. Sonia was getting desperate. She went to look in the kitchen and family room to see if her slipper was in the fridge or on top of the oven or in the dishwasher. Sonia was beginning to lose feeling in her right pinky toe. Then she turned her attention to the family room. Next to the back door, poking out of the puppy's basket, was one pink, fluffy, right slipper. Slightly chewed and a bit moist and misshapen, but definitely the pair of the one she was wearing on her left foot. Stanley the spaniel had helped himself to Sonia's slipper and taken it back to his basket. Which seemed strange. Why would Stanley want one pink slipper when he had 4 paws to keep warm?
Now, have you ever thought of starting your own band? What musical instrument would you play? And what would you call your band?
Roger was in a band. His band was the best band in the whole world, and they were well on their way to becoming famous. One day, thought Roger, we'll be on top of the world. Everyone will know all of the words to all of our songs, and we'll be the hippest, coolest gig ever. Roger, however, knew that worldwide domination and success did not come easy. He knew that to get to the top, the band had to practice very hard. And so every evening after school, Roger and his band, the Sparkling Tornadoes, practiced very, very hard indeed in Roger's bedroom. There was Baz on drums. could play those drums faster than a rocket ship, and his arms moved so quickly you couldn't even keep track of them. They were just one great big noisy banging blur. But boy, could Baz keep a rhythm and hold a tune. There was Clay on bass guitar. He knew the chords to tons and tons of different songs and so looked the part. He wore dark sunglasses and kept his head bent low, concentrating all the time on his bassy beat. There was Yaz on guitar. It was cool to have a girl in the band too, and Yaz could play that guitar like there was no tomorrow. And then there was Digger on percussion. He could do all sorts of things with all sorts of instruments. He even made up instruments out of things nobody would ever think could be played. Things like old bicycle wheels and yogurt pots. Digger was pretty cool, all right. And then finally there was Roger. Roger, of course, was the lead singer in the band. And the best looking frontsman anyone had ever laid eyes on. And as for style, Roger could make a pack and save bag look like Armani if he so chose to. And Roger was up there with all the greats when it came to singing. He could be soulful or operatic. He could sing the blues and the red, green and pinks. He could croon like Sinatra and rap like the Fresh Prince. Roger could do it all. And Roger had a dream. He knew that Roger and the Sparkling Tornadoes were the best band in the world. He just had to convince the rest of the world. And so every night after school the band practiced and practiced and practiced. Baz on the drums would be over in the corner next to the wardrobe banging away. Clay on his bass would stand by the toy box strumming diligently. Yaz would be over by the beanbag, guitar buckled over her shoulder, belting out a melody. Digger, who needed a lot of space for all his percussion instruments, would be right in the middle of the room plonking this and plinking that. And Roger, well, as you know, Roger was the lead singer and frontsman for the band, and so Roger got to stand on the racing car bed, hairbrush in hand, a temporary measure only until the band got some money together and could afford a real microphone. And as the Sparkling Tornadoes practiced their tunes, Roger would dazzle them all with his fearless stage antics and exceptional voice. Until each evening at about 6 p.m, another voice would call up from downstairs, "Roger, your dinner's ready." "Later," Roger would say to the band in his bedroom as he quietly closed the door behind him and headed off downstairs for tea.
Okay, very serious question now. I want you to put your thinking cap on. If you could be a superhero, what superpower would you like to have?
Otis Rocket could ride a bike quite well. He rode through the bush, over streams, down banks, not big cliffs, but certainly down some pretty gnarly dips. Otis Rocket was quite adept at climbing trees. He climbed many a tree in his time, and there weren't too many he couldn't climb, or at least have a good go at. Otis Rocket could swim, run, jump, skate on his board, ski on his skis, and Otis Rocket could fly. You know Superman? He could fly faster. You know a spaceship? He could fly higher. Otis Rocket could fly, well, like a rocket. Oliver Finn was one of Otis Rocket's best friends. He too could ride a bike, climb a tree, run and jump, and, well, he couldn't fly. But Oliver Finn could swim. Ever seen how fast a dolphin could swim? Oliver Finn was faster. Ever seen how big and strong and powerful whales are in the water? Oliver Finn was stronger and more powerful than anything in the water. Arlo Zephyr, he was another friend of Otis Rocket's and Oliver Finn's. Arlo Zephyr could run like the wind. Faster in fact, faster than a tornado, more powerful than a hurricane. Arlo Zephyr was fast on his feet. Millie Marzipan, well, she couldn't fly, she couldn't swim very fast, and she certainly couldn't run like the wind. Millie Marzipan was a shapeshifter. She could change herself into any shape she liked. She was an expert at hide and seek. Even in a small room, she could get down on all fours and change into the shape of a coffee table. They never found her. She always won at hide and seek. Our four friends were superheroes. They still had to go to school and do their homework and help with the dishes after tea, but in their spare time, they would put out bushfires, rescue people on mountains, stop ships from sinking at sea. They even saved the world once. But the one thing they couldn't do, well, it was a little embarrassing, really. Gosh, when you think about it, one can fly like a bird, one can run like the wind, one could swim like a fish, and one could even change their own shape to anything they like, but they couldn't remember their times tables. Is 6 times 7 24 or 42? Asked Arlo Zephyr. What do you get when you multiply 12 by 10? Wondered Millie Marzipan. 1 times 1 is 1. Otis Rocket could at least remember that one. But Oliver Finn, well, can you eat your dinner off the times table? Not really a question that would impress your teacher. Yes, our fabulous foursome, this crusading quartet of superheroes, could not get the hang of the times table. Once Otis Rocket saved a giant moth from flying into the sun. As we all know, moths are attracted to the light, and well, this giant moth called Ernie was attracted to the sun.
Oh, that's a bright light. I think I'll go for a bit of a fly.
And off Ernie the giant moth flew. As he flapped and flooped his giant wings, he got closer and closer to the sun, and as he got closer to the sun, it started getting a little bit warm. Back on Earth, Ernie cast a giant shadow over the whole planet, and all of a sudden got very cold, kind of like when a cloud goes over, but bigger. Off Otis Rocket flew. He flew faster than a speeding flea, quicker than a blink, speedier than a spider on a hot tin roof. Whoosh! He was gone. He caught up with Ernie the giant moth easily, turned around and sent him back to Earth, and he landed safely and cooled off in a lake. Once, Oliver Finn saved the day at the World Surfing Championships. It was the grand final. Everyone was there, all the cameras and people and judges. They were all ready, waiting for the first wave. But nothing. Just seagulls and the odd ripple. The surfers were most disappointed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Oliver Finn heard about their disappointment and swam as fast as he could. He swam faster than a dolphin, quicker than a whitebait, speedier than a seal chasing a particularly delicious-looking fish. When Oliver Finn got there was not a wave to be seen. So he swam backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, and the waves started growing and growing and growing, and by the end of the day, the surfers got to surf on some of the biggest waves ever ridden. It was the best surfing world championship ever. Once Millie Marzipan went on a secret mission. Lunches were going missing at school. It was most annoying. Imagine waiting all morning for your lunch, only to find someone had already eaten it. It just wouldn't do. Millie Marzipan popped into the cloakroom just outside the classroom where everyone's bags and lunches were stored, and turned herself into a hat stand and just stood there. Nothing happened. She turned herself into a rubbish bin. Still, nothing happened. She then turned herself into a delicious ham and egg sandwich and just sat there. Nothing. Until in snuck and sneaked, crept and crawled a very sly, very cheeky, very naughty little possum. It snuck and sneaked and crept and crawled its sly and cheeky way to where Millie Marzipan was sitting. It sniffed what it thought was a delicious-looking ham and egg sandwich, but when Millie Marzipan turned into a giant monster and scared the possum away, the possum ran off and was never seen again, and everyone's lunch was safe. Once, Arlo Zephyr had a telephone conversation with himself. He was on holiday at his gran's in Dunedin. He rang his home in Northland, and before it rang a second time, he had run all the way from Dunedin to Northland and answered the phone. "Hello!" He spoke into the phone and ran like the wind back to Dunedin and picked up the phone before his voice had even reached it. "Hello!" he heard down the line. "Hello, Arlo! This is Arlo!" He said into the phone and ran like the wind from Dunedin to Northland and picked up the phone before his voice had even got there. He lifted the phone to his ear and heard, "Hello, Arlo! This is Arlo!" This conversation went on for quite some time, and he got in trouble for making a toll call without asking first. Yes, this group of superheroes were indeed quite talented in their own way, but no matter how good they were at running and swimming and flying and changing shapes, they couldn't do their times table. 6 times 6 is 66, Millie Marzipan tried. "Nearly," said her teacher. "Try 36. A little more practice, I think, Millie." And there was the problem. Arlo Zephyr had practiced and practiced and practiced his running until he got it just right. Otis Rocket had practiced and practiced and practiced till he managed to control his flying. Oliver Finn had practiced and practiced and practiced until he could not only swim like a fish, but better. And Millie Marzipan, well, she had practiced and practiced and practiced to perfect her shape-shifting, but none of them had really ever practiced their times tables. See, even superheroes need to practice. Practice makes perfect, Arlo Zephyr's gran used to say. So while he was flying along in the sky, Otis Rocket would practice his times tables. While towing an oil tanker halfway around the world, Oliver Finn practiced his times tables. While playing hide and seek and turning herself into a pot plant, Millie Marzipan practiced her times tables. While running through the Sahara Desert at 150 kilometres per hour, Arlo Zephyr practiced his times tables. They practiced, and they practiced, and they practiced. And then they got it. 6 times 6 is 36! Millie Marzipan was so proud of herself, because even though she could change into any shape she liked, she could also do her times tables. 7 times 8 is 56! Arlo Zephyr had got it. Otis Rocket was just showing off now. 12 times 7 is 84. 12 times 8 is 96. 12 times 9 is 108. Oliver Finn knew them all off by heart. 12 times 11 is 132. So now that they had practiced and perfected their times tables, our 4 superheroes went off and did something else quite extraordinary. They got started on their spelling. Is it I before E except after breakfast? Asked Arlo as he ran up and down Mount Taranaki 10 times in 7 seconds. Do you always have to use a U after a Q? Millie Marzipan queried as she turned herself into a giraffe. So the letter Y can be used as a vowel and a consonant, Otis Rocket inquired as he flew to the moon and back. If it's a silent P, why do you need it?
That's my lot for another week. Thanks ever so much for joining me. I will catch you again next week. Until then, ka kite anō.
I wanna hear the one about the big old plum tree. I wanna hear the one about the giggly